Hi, I'm Tony Fowle. This is just one video in a series of tutorial videos showing how to use my motorcycle setup software, which you can see more details of on my website at www.tonyfowle.com.
A shock isn't always fitted with a fixed spring rate as shown here. There are times when the shock's fitted with a progressive wound spring and or a bump stop rubber. When we need to enter such items into the software, we select the custom spring and bump stop screen. Here we've got two separate tables. The one on the left refers to the data for custom spring. The one on the right refers to data for bump stop. The graph on the far right, we can alternate between plotting the data for the bump stop rubber or the spring. The data for both of these we enter in as a series of increasing displacements and the data for the force measured at those particular displacements. The spacing between the displacements doesn't have to be even, as is shown here. When we measure the force, we always have some errors in the measurement which cause some scatter of the curve shown here in red, which are the entered values, about what we might regard as being the true values. The blue line in this case is the curve of a second order polynomial which is the best fit through the data points that we have. So in most cases it would be desirable to use the smooth values when we do the analysis of the suspension, and we can choose whether to use those or not by ticking or unticking here in this particular tick box. In the case, for example, as shown in the front fork screen for the custom spring for that, sometimes we may actually have a genuine dual rate spring, in which case we would have a distinct kink in the entered values which we'd actually want to keep. So in that case we would untick this box. But in the case where we've got a general progressive rate spring, in most cases we'd want to elect to use the smooth curve. If we're happy with the data that we've put in here and we actually want to use that in the analysis of the suspension, we just click on this tick box to use the custom data. If we don't do that, then it will just use the fixed spring rate that's specified here and on the previous suspension analysis screen. We have the option to save the data of any custom spring that we put in here. I won't go through that in this tutorial because it's fairly self-explanatory. We just click on the save spring and that's all there is to it. Prior to that though, we can give a description to a particular spring, which makes it easier to find it later, and also a 3-character reference number, which just simply uniquely ties that spring to the suspension project that we're looking at. We have the same features for the bump stop rubber for the description and reference. We need to enter those if we want to save the bump stop rubber, and later of course we can load in the spring or bump stop rubber from here. Looking at the bump stop rubber, we enter data in exactly the same manner, although the actual displacements of the bump stop rubber will be less, and in general it will be a fairly nonlinear characteristic. Again, in this case, the data that we have actually entered fits exactly onto the smooth line, so in this case we don't see the underlying red line with the entered values. Again, normally for fairly short bump stop rubbers we would want to use the smoothed values because we wouldn't have a dual rate bump rubber deliberately. However, some longer bump rubbers which might be used to bolster to give a progressive effect to traditional twin shocks on classic motocross machines, for example, it may well be that the shape of this curve can't sensibly be or can't accurately be represented by a second order polynomial equation, in which case we'd elect to not use the smooth curve and use the data that was entered. When we're satisfied, when we've picked a spring, say we want to use add this bump rubber, for example, to our analysis, we can just simply click on use the bump stop, and then if we go to OK here, then that will be included in the analysis. And if we plot this, we will probably see the effect of the bump stop rubber at the end.
Well, that's it for now. To make sure that you don't miss any more of these tutorial videos on the motorcycle setup software, I suggest that you tick the like button on this one and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Motor Chassis. For more information about the suspension setup software and my book on chassis design, I suggest you visit my website at www.tonyfole.com. Thanks for watching.